So let's continue. So I believe you are done copying the notes, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Now we are coming to look. We are going to take a look at the human respiratory system. We are going to take a look at the human respiratory system. So, for human beings, we have an entire system that is responsible for what the respiration. Remember that in our previous lectures we talked about levels of organization, right? We said we had cells. Cells comes together to form what? Cells comes together to form what? I remember teaching you this.
Organ.
Nope. Something comes before the organ.
Sir, please, a tissue.
Yes. Cells comes together to form tissue.
Tissues.
Tissue comes together to form what?
Sir, please, an organism. An organ.
Organism.
An organ,
An
not
organ.
an organism. An organ. Organs comes together to form what?
Organ
An
system.
organism.
Yes, organ system. No, no, no. Organism is the last thing. No. An organ system. Organ system. So system. So we are going to talk about this one. You get it? That is where the respiratory system is. So after the organ system, what is the next thing? Last the last thing is the what? The organism.
Organism.
Yes. So here we are going to talk about what? The human respiratory system. Right? And you know the human respiratory system consists of what? A lot of organs. Right? So examples of the organs we have the nostrils, the trachea, bronchus, bronchial. We are going to talk about them and all their functions. Alveoli. What do we call it again? The lungs, and so on. You get the point? So let me get a nice image that we can talk about. So let's. I don't want anything complex. Yes, I think this one. This one will be okay for us. I think this one will be okay for us. So this is the human respiratory system. I think this is the simplest one we can talk about at your level. So what you see over here is the human respiratory system. And I know that most of you have these diagrams in your classrooms and all that, right? So you are
Yes,
familiar with
please.
them.
Yes, please.
So what you see
Yes,
here is
please.
the human respiratory
Yeah.
system. Before we can breathe air, or the air has to pass through all of this process. Okay. So the whole thing is a system. but all the labeled parts are what? Are organs, right? Within the labeled parts, they are what we call tissues, and within the tissues, they are what we call cell. So the entire human being is the what? Is the organism, right? The entire human being is the organism. The respiratory system, the entire system, is what we call the what? The organ system. Organ system, which is also known as what? The respiratory system, right? Now, when we take one part, let's say the pharynx becomes the what? The organ, right? If we look into the pharynx, we will see tissues inside, and if we look into the tissues, we will see cells. Cells are the last stop. You can't go further again. Okay? Uh-huh. So that is how we are made up of. We are made up of different systems. So before you can form one organism, you have to break it down to different form of systems. We have respiratory system, reproductive system. I think there are about 12 systems that make the whole human being up, right? Now, when you take each system, you find organs in the system. If we take respiratory system, we find organs like lungs, bronchus, bronchial, larynx, pharynx, alveoli, and all that. If we take the circulatory system too, you will see the heart, you will see the blood vessels and all that. So that is it. Okay. So now this is the respiratory system, and that is what we are going to talk about. So this is the diagram with the label part. We are going to talk about the structures of the respiratory system and their function. Okay. Now, before we talk about, let's imagine that we've taken air. Someone has breathed in air. So we can breathe air either through our mouth or through our nose. You know that if you cover your nose, you can still breathe through your mouth. Hello,
Yes, please.
hello.
Hi.
You know that if you cover your nose,
Hi.
you can still breathe through your mouth.
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Okay. So imagine that you've taken air. You've taken air. Before you breathe, the air will either enter through your nose, which is mostly what it does. And remember that air contains a lot of particles, right? It could be dust particles and all that. So if you look into your nose, you can stand in the mirror and look into your nose. You see that you find some hair inside. Who has ever seen hair in their nose before? So there are tiny hairs in your nose. Okay, there are tiny hairs in your nose. Now, what these hair that are found in our nose does is that it traps the dust particles. So the air has to be filtered, right? So that we can get smooth air into your lungs. Now, when you begin to cough, the reason why you cough is that something bad has entered into the lungs. That is not air. You get it? Uh-huh. So when you cough, you are trying to get that. You are trying to get rid of that thing. So that's why when you inhale those particles, you sneeze or you cough. You sneeze because the dust particles has entered into your lungs, and your lungs does not like the dust particles, so it is bringing it out through the nose, right? You cough because the something bad has entered into your lungs, right? Which is not air. So you are trying to bring that thing out. So that is the reason why you cough and what and sneeze. So
Okay.
when we take in the air, what happens is that the air will pass through this channel first. Okay. Now the air
This
will
is the track.
first pass through the pharynx. You get it? The pharynx. Then it will come into the larynx first. Then it will
Hmm.
enter into the
That's good.
trachea. Okay. Now, now the larynx is also known as the voice box.
But
Yes. Now, if you touch, you can do this right now. You can touch your pharynx and then talk. You see that it is shaking, it's vibrating, right? So when you touch that portion, when you touch this side of your body or this side of your neck, and you begin to talk, you realize that there is some vibration. There is some vibration. It's vibrating. You can see that there is some vibration. Okay. So the larynx is also known as the voice box. and we can sing, we can talk, we can do all those voice things because of this larynx, right? They vibrate to produce sound. So those who cannot talk, like those who are damp, right? Who cannot talk, there could be an issue with their voice box that does not allow them to produce what? To produce noise. You get it? So they cannot talk because there's something wrong with their voice box. That's why those who are damp, you can see them opening their mouth, but you will not hear any sound, right? Because something bad has happened to their what? Their larynx or their voice box. Now, the air will pass through here and it will pass through the trachea. So the trachea is also known as the windpipe. Okay, I'm explaining, but we'll still write notes on it. The windpipe. Now, when it enters the windpipe, it moves from the windpipes and then it goes to the what? To the bronchus. So this thing you see here is the bronchus. Now you could see that this thing looks like a tree. This thing that you see here. You can see it looks like a tree, right? Hello. The thing that you see in
Yeah,
the lungs.
hi. Yes.
You can see that it
Yeah,
looks
we
like
can
tree.
see it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what happens is that the air will now come to the bronchus, and then from the bronchus, what does it do? It's going to the bronchioles. The bronchioles are like the branches of a tree. Okay. So when it enters into the bronchioles, it will definitely go into the alveoli. So the alveoli they are like air sacs. You see, if you look at the edge of the bronchioles, there's something like round thing. That round thing at the very last point of the bronchioles. They are like spots, small spots. Those things Those things, they are called alveoli. Now the alveoli, they are responsible for gaseous exchange, right? Uh, so the alveoli is where the air will enter, the air that you breathe will enter into the body, into our bloodstream, and then it will move all around all our bodies, right? So that is respiration. Now, what the lungs does is that the lungs contain all of these things. The lungs contain the bronchioles and the alveoli, right? And the lungs is filled up with these things. And the lung too is like a sack. You get it? Because a lot of alveoli are found in the lung. So anytime we breathe in, what happens is that we inflate the sac, right? It's like a balloon. Anytime we breathe in, it's like we fill the lung with air. Anytime we breathe out, it's like we release the air from the lungs. So that is what breathing actually is. Okay? So let's do a quick recap. Now you take in the air. Where does the air enter? It enters the nose or the nasal cavity. It goes through the pharynx. It comes to the larynx. It comes to the trachea. Then it will move from the trachea. It will go into the bronchus and then to the bronchioles. Then it will enter into the alveoli. And in the alveoli, that is where the gaseous exchange occurs. Now, this diaphragm you see here, it is what allows us to what? To move our lungs up and down. You get the point? So before you can just breathe in, you can do this right now. You can just take a deep breath inside. So when you take a deep breath inside, you see that something like as if your stomach has lifted. Have you noticed that? When you take in the deep breath, it appears as if your stomach has lifted. Now, what is lifting is not your stomach, it's the diaphragm, right? So the diaphragm just what? Constructs. When you breathe in, your diaphragm constructs what? To fill the lungs with what? With air, right? When you breathe out, the diaphragm relaxes to give out air from the lungs. You get the point. So this is basically how respiration occurs. So we are going to write some short notes on all of these parts, right? The nasal cavity, the pharynx, the larynx, the bronchioles, alveoli, diaphragm, bronchial lungs, and all that. Okay. So when you are coughing, maybe you've gotten catarrh or common cold, what is happening is that it's affecting your this parts of the respiratory system, the top part. Okay. And sometimes when you cough excessively, it's because of it is affected or it's affecting the lungs. That's why if you look at a lot of cough syrup, you realize that they've drawn the lungs on it. Have you ever seen that before? if you have cough syrup, I know that when we were
Yes,
kids, we were
please.
giving some cough
Yes,
syrups and all that. You see that
yes, please.
they've drawn the lines on the cough syrup. This is to tell you that the cough syrup, when you take it, is going to work on this part of your body, right? To relieve you from the burden of coughing and sneezing and all that. So let's write some short notes on the respiratory system. Now I believe you can explain the respiratory system to your mother, right? Or to your sisters. So all you have to know is to know the names. The pharynx, the larynx, the bronchial, trachea, alveoli, lungs. Let it be on your fingertips. Okay? So let's write some notes.
Mhm.
So parts of, let me expand a little bit, the respiratory system. So first of all, let's talk about the nasal cavity, or what we call the nostrils. So first one, you have the nasal passage, stroke cavity, nostril. So let's write some points under them. earpiece mi de hyɛ ma so a mete deɛ ɛkɔ so o ɛnyɛ sɛ ma so esisi ɛda ɛdɛ yɛ talenda mete deɛ ɛkɔ so nyinaa why bi te paapaatwɔ mete why. So this is about the nose or the nasal cavity. I would like someone to read for us. Why you? Abra,
Yes.
read for us.
1. It allows the passage of air.
Mhm,
It has air-like structures that filter out dust particles
mhm,
from incoming air stream.
mhm,
The filtering
mhm,
prevents airborne bacteria,
mhm,
viruses, and other substances that can cause infection to the lungs.
mhm,
It also contains mucus,
mhm,
which moistens and
mhm,
then warms the incoming air.
mhm.
This is to protect the structure of the respiratory system.
Wonderful reading. So,
Thank you.
so that is the nasal cavity for you. So first of all, what happens is that it allows the passage of air. Hmm? When you cover your nose and you cover your mouth, air cannot enter into your ear, into your lungs. When you cover your nose and you cover your mouth, you can't breathe through your ears. Although there are some people that have certain abnormalities that allow them to breathe through their ears. They can use straw, they can pass straw through their ears into their nose, into their mouth. It's an abnormality. And normal human beings cannot breathe through the ear. We only breathe through where? Our nose and our mouth. It has a hair-like structure, right? That filter out that particle. Now let me see if I can get an image of the nose that contains hair for you to visualize what I'm talking about. I think I'll get nice images for you. Okay. So this is what we are talking about. Can you see? Can you see? Hello. So this is the nose, and these are the hairs that are found within the nose. Now, what is the function of the air? Is to filter dust particles. So So imagine that we are breathing in, you know, the function of the air is to filter dust particles. So imagine that I'm having air. This is the air that is entering my nose, right? And out of the air we have debris, we have particles and all those things. When it reaches here, all these particles will get stuck to the head, and the true air will enter through the nose directly. Do you get the point? That's why we say that it's filter. When we say filter, in tree, you better make say a sonne so, right? A sonne air ne so. Then be a air papa no be there, be call nose. So why is who is laughing? Naki, are you the one? Well, I've not seen human nose in human hair before. Maybe you don't have some in your hair, so everyone has hair in their nose. So from incoming airstream, the filtering prevents airborne bacteria, and what? And viruses and other substances that could be infectious to the lungs. You see, God is so wonderful. He should try his best to protect us, from diseases. It will be very
Yes.
difficult for us to get what lung infection or respiratory disease because God has put in measures to. God know by all means the environment can be polluted. This thing like there could be pollution in the air, so He brought air into our what our nostrils, so that in case we even inhale the pollutants, at least not all the pollutants will enter straight into our lungs, right? Our hair, the hair in our nose will be able to what filter the dust particles as well. So aside it preventing dust particles, it also prevents bacteria, viruses, and all those things. You get it? Ah. So the reason why we wouldn't, what do we call it? Sneeze. I've already explained the sneezing thing to you as well. Yeah. Now the next thing is what? It contains mucus. Do you know what mucus is?
Nope.
You don't know mucus. Okay. So do you want me to show you mucus?
Yes.
You want to see mucus? Are you sure you are ready to see mucus?
Yes.
Okay, so that thing that is found within your nose. Sometimes when you are, I don't even know how to even say it. When you are blowing your nose off, have you seen that thing?
Mm,
Yes, that is mucus for you. So it has a function. It has a function. What does it do? It moistens the air and warms what the incoming air that enters the respiratory system. So sometimes if you don't feel like blowing off your nose, don't force those things out of your nose. God knows the reason why He brought them into your nose. Eh? Those things that you find within your nose, God knows the reason why He brought them there. Right? So don't just remove them out. If you feel like blowing your nose, yes, you can blow it. But if you don't feel like blowing your nose, or if it is not filled up in your nose, don't blow them out. Let it be in there because it has a purpose. Right? And what's the purpose? To moisten and also to warm the incoming air. You get it? Because the air that has to enter our lungs has to be cool air. Hmm? The lungs cannot take warm air. So the things that are found within the nose, it's what? It cools down the air. It's in Framana Ebanasa, the moment it enters our nose, what happens? It cools down the air so that cool air can enter into our respiratory system. So this is the nostrils for you and what it does. So in case they ask you the function of the nostrils, you have a lot to say. You can say it allows the passage of air. You can also say it has air particles that filters dust particles, right? It has hair-like structure that filter dust particles. You can also say it contains mucus that what moisten the air and then warm the air. I believe I've explained this enough for you to understand.
yes.
Now let's move on to the next respiratory organ, and that will be the pharynx. I'll show you how the pharynx looks like and then its function. So continue with the notes.
I wish I know.
So I'm going to show you how the pharynx looks like.
Oh my.
You see someone has opened their mouth, right? And some of you are going to be future doctors, so this thing should not do you anything. So now this is where if you look straight, hmm, if you look straight within the mouth, you realize that all the space that moves from this side downwards, where I've marked this thing with the black ink, downwards, they are all called the pharynx, right? And you see, anytime you open your mouth, there are some two things you see over here. They are called the tonsils. See those two things you see over here? They are the tonsils. Those are what we call the tonsils. Now, the pharynx, it occurs at the back of the mouth and then opens to the larynx. So we all know that it's at the back of the mouth. So the innermost part of the mouth, that is where the pharynx is what is located. So that is the pharynx. Air from the nose enters the pharynx. So now, if there was to be a continuation of this image, let's say something like this, and then the nose. So let's say this will be the nose. Now, the nose, anytime the air enters through the nose, it's definitely going to come down here. Anytime we breathe in the air through the nose, let's just see if this thing to be our nose, right?
So please, I cannot see point three.
You cannot see point there. Can you see point there? I can see someone that's laughing. so, so let's see. When the air enters through the nose, right? It's definitely going to come down to the what? The pharynx. The pharynx is found at behind the what? The mouth.
So please, I cannot see point three.
Can you can you see point there? Can you see point there now? The way people are laughing in my class, let me clean the this thing. So I'll just continue with the image to illustrate to you how the nose the air enters the nose and then eventually comes to the what? The pharynx. So all you have to know is that the pharynx is behind the what? The mouth. That is what you should know. It's found behind the mask, and it contains what we call tonsils. So those two things, when you open your mouth wide, those two things that you see over there, they are what we call the tonsils. So all that you have to know is that this the what do we call it? I hope you can hear me. I believe you can hear me.
Yes, please.
Yes,
So
please.
I was saying that anytime someone breathes through the nostrils, the air will definitely come to the pharynx. And where is the pharynx? It's located at the back of the mouth. So you could see that there's a connection between the nose and the then the mouth, right? The back of the mouth, that is the pharynx.
No.
So when I breathe air through my mouth, it will eventually go to the pharynx. When I breathe air through my nostrils, it will eventually go to the pharynx. Just take a look at how the pharynx looks like in this image. You realize that, let's zoom this one and see how it looks like. You realize that when I breathe through my mouth, it's definitely going to reach here. That is where the pharynx is. When I breathe through my nose, it's definitely going to reach here. So there's a connection between the nose and then the what? The mouth. You see the connection. Ah. So that is the pharynx for you. Now, air from the nostrils enters it, right? So right from the nose, it enters through the pharynx. Now it houses the tonsils. So those two things that you see here, they are what we call tonsils. And there's one wonderful thing about the tonsils. The tonsils contain what we call white blood cells. And what the white blood cell does is that it fights against diseases. So this is what happens. When you look deep within your throat like this, you will see the tonsils over there within your mouth. They are the pharynx. You see the tonsils, two of them. They are there like this. Now, what happens is that if the air is too stubborn, if the particle, that particles or the bacteria, is too stubborn to the extent that it escapes the hair, it passes through the air and then dodge all the hair particles, and it eventually also dodges all the what, the mucus and everything, and finally comes to the tonsils. The tonsils has white blood cells, and those white blood cells, they are like soldiers. What they do is that they will just trap the what, those dust particles. They'll just trap them, those dust particles, and then that will be the last stop of whatever bacteria or whatever viruses. So that is one function of the pharynx. They contain what we call cilia and what do we call it? Tonsils, and the tonsils contains white blood cells. You get the point. So that is for the pharynx. Now let's go to the next one. That is our voice box. What allows us to speak. Are you enjoying the lesson?
Yes, very much.
So and larynx, or what we call the voice box. Now you see those musicians that have been singing beautifully and all that is because of this voice box. So imagine that someone is singing and you just hold the voice box. What happens? The music will just stop because it's the voice box that is controlling the person's voice. The person's voice, right? I'm talking right now is because my voice box is vibrating. I'm able to sing and shout because of my what? My voice box. I know someone will ask that if we have voice box, why do we need microphones when we are singing?
So, larynx, bracket. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Suleiman,
Sure.
where from that sound? Are you practicing how to use your voice box? Please practice that after my class. Eh? So under this place, we'll talk about some nice things over here: the glottis and the epiglottis. Okay. This is TTU, TTIS. TTIS. This is, let me just cancel it. Uh-oh. Nope, 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 nope. If we go to, okay. So this is the larynx, or what we call the voice box. Let me see if I can get something to show as well for the voice box.
Hi. Hi.
Let's see how the voice box looks like. So this is how the voice box looks like.
Bro.
Okay. So now let's take a look. Let's read what is there for the larynx. It is the region that contains the Adam's apple. Do you know Adam's apple? You see that some men, you see that they have something in their throat. I believe you know what Adam's apple is. You know what Adam's apple is? Hello.
Yes.
You know what Adam's apple is?
Yeah.
You see some people they have bass voice and you see their Adam's apple showing everywhere. Those kind of people. That is Adam's apple for you.
Yeah.
I think none of you have Adam's apple. You are all children, so you don't have Adam's apple. The men in our class, I don't think any of you have Adam's apple.
Hey. Chip.
Do you have so this is Adam's apple.
No.
You see that thing you see over here? Can you see it?
Yeah.
This thing. This thing right here at the neck. That is Adam's apple for you. So the larynx. So the Adam's apple is found at the larynx, right? Now, air moves from the pharynx to the larynx through the small opening called glottis. Okay, so there's a place that air enters the what the larynx, and that space is what we call the glottis. Now, a flap of tissue called epiglottis covers the glottis. Now, the epiglottis prevents food and fluid from entering the air passage to cause choking. The larynx allow people to talk and sing. Now, if you look at the larynx, there's what we call voice cord, and this is how the voice cord look like. You see that small opening here, that's the voice cord. So we're able to talk because of this thing. You get it? We're able to talk and hear the sound because of this voice cord over here. And people can sing, right? Because of this same voice cord. So you see those that I don't know those that are part of the choir. The do re mi fa sol la ti da. Before you can say those, before you can sing those things, it is your voice cord in action. In other words, your larynx in action. That is why you are able to produce that sound you can hear and talk. Singing and talking is the responsibility of the larynx or the voice box. Now let me show you what the function of the glottis and the epiglottis, what it does. Now you realize that we said that the epiglottis prevents us from what choking or from allowing this one into our air passage, right? So now the reason why mostly when you are talking they ask you not to watch. When you are eating they ask you not to talk. You know why when you are eating they ask you not to talk? It's because of this thing over here. Now if you take a look at it very well, you see the epiglottis. This is how the epiglottis look like. That thing, that flap thing you see over here. Now, what happens is that the epiglottis, it prevents food from entering our respiratory system. Okay, it prevents food from entering our respiratory system. So what happens is that anytime we eat, the food enters here. Anytime we eat, the food enters here, and then it enters into our esophagus. Do you get the point? So here, the esophagus is where it enters into our stomach and all that. That same point, when the air is passing, when the air reaches here, then it passes this way. So food pass this way, air pass this way, food pass this way, air pass this way. And it is the epiglottis that prevents food from passing this way into our lungs. This is our air space where air pass, and this is where food pass. So when you are eating, you have to keep quiet because when you are eating and then you keep quiet, what happens is that you prevent air from entering into the hot. You prevent the food from entering into the air passage so that you will not get choked. Because the moment food enters here, you get choked and then you have to cough out. That is why you get choke. Choke means food has entered your what? Your air passage. Food or water has entered your air passage. The air passage, it is only air that has to pass through, right? So it is this epiglottis that prevents food from entering the what? The air passage. So when you are eating and talking at the same time, what you are doing is that you are disturbing the epiglottis, right? So you are eating, you are talking, you allow the epiglottis to open because the epiglottis covers the air passage to prevent what food from entering. So the moment you begin to talk while eating, what happens is that you are disturbing the epiglottis. You allow it to open, and the moment it opens, food can get the chance to enter into the what? Into the air passage, and you begin to cough or choke, get choke, and then you be coughing and all that. That's why it's good to cover your mouth and stop talking whilst you are what you are eating. Okay, let your body that do its job. Don't disturb it, right? Okay. So that is how the epiglottis prevent food from entering the what the air passage. So that is the larynx for you. So when they ask you to tell anything about the larynx, you can say that it is the region where it contains the what, or it is the region which contains the Adam's apple, right? You can also say that air from the pharynx enters the larynx through the glottis, or through the air from the pharynx enters the larynx. Asa. You can also say that it contains epiglottis that prevents food from entering into the what air passageway. You can also say it allows people to think and talk because it is the voice box that is responsible for that allows people to talk, right? And moreover, it also contains cilia and mucus to also trap or filter air, right? So it means if the dust particle or whatever bacteria is able to escape the nose, if the bacteria is able to escape the pharynx, it will definitely come and meet this gentleman, the pharynx. The pharynx will contain cilia and mucus. That further traps bacteria. Okay, so that is for the larynx also. Now let's go to the next organ, which is the trachea. Any question up to this point? I know you have a lot of questions. Okay, if there are no questions, then let me continue. Now let's move on to the next one, which is the trachea. Okay, Hafiz, your hand is up. Hafiz, your hand is up. Hafiz, your hand is up. Okay, if Hafiz is not ready to ask a question, then let me continue. So let's talk about the trachea. Another name for trachea is windpipe. Trachea. Hello, can you hear me? Hello.
Hi.
moistens, not moisturize, moistens, moistens air. Israel for now. So this is the trachea. This is how the trachea looks like. That's why it's called windpipe. You see that it looks like a pipe, right? That's why it's called windpipe.
Yes.
So that is the trachea. And what did we say? We say that the air from the larynx enters the water trachea. So all that you have to know that is that it's like the air is moving. So every structure, the air came from the previous structure. So you realize that you could notice the trend that the at the pharynx we say that air from the nostrils enters the pharynx. At the larynx we say that air from the larynx enters the and air from the pharynx enters the larynx. At the trachea we also said that air from the larynx enters the trachea. So in that order, you get the point. So it's the air that is flowing through the respiratory system. Okay. So the trachea is the windpipe. It's also known as the windpipe. So this is how it looks like. Hmm? All of us we have this. All of us we have this. Just that we cannot see. But sometimes you touch it, you can feel that yes, there's something there. So that is the trachea. Now, air from the larynx enters the trachea, and it also contains mucus and cilia, just like the other structures, right? That traps those particles. Now, it also warms and moisturizes air. Then finally, we say that it splits into two tubes called the bronchus. So realize that at this point, the trachea will split or will divide into two tubes, right? And those two tubes are called the bronchus. So bronchus here, bronchus there. They are all bronchus. You get it? So that is trachea for you. Now let's move to the next. So what will be the next structure? Who can tell me the next structure? What will be the next structure?
Bronchus.
Come again.
Bronchus.
The bronchus, yes.
Bronchus.
It's the bronchus. So bronchus becomes the next structure. Who is playing piano behind the background? Okay. So let's move to the next. The the bronchus. The bronchus is there are some short notes under it, so we won't waste time. It allows the passage of air. It cells and mucus to trap dust particles, bacteria. It splits into numerous smaller smaller branches called the bronchioles. So beat the background.
The,
Hello.
the second point of bronchus, roots its cells are
Lined
lined with cilia and
cilia and
mucus
mucus
to
to
trap
trap.
CO particles.
Oh, to trap is dust to just clean dust particles and bacteria.
Okay, thank
Welcome. So, so this is how it looks like the bronchus, and then the bronchioles as well. So basically, this is it. So this diagram we can use it to illustrate the bronchus and the bronchioles. So this is the bronchus. Watch me, oh, what I'm circling. This thing is the bronchus, and these tree-like things are the bronchioles. These two things that branches are the bronchus, and these tree-like things are the what? Are the bronchioles. Are you getting it? So that's the bronchus. So the bronchioles, so it means we can talk about the bronchioles and use this same diagram to illustrate, right? Bronchial, keel, keel.
Is the spelling of the bronchioles in the
First one, right?
bronchus? She spells it wrong.
Wrong, yes. Thanks for alerting me. So let's change it. So bronchiola, keel, bronchiola. So it also allows the passage of air. What does it do again? It also contains cilia and mucus that trap dust particles. So you realize that the cilia and the mucus it runs through all the structures of the respiratory system. All the structures. So even if you don't have any point, at that point there, you should know. Every structure has cilia and mucus that traps dust particles. So if you've forgotten all your points, that's one Friday, you should know that it runs through all. it also contains cilia, right? Cilia and mucus. And you know what the cilia and the mucus, what they do? They trap that particles and bacteria. So you continue yourself. When you reach here, you continue yourself. That traps that particles and bacteria. So it ends in a bunch of tiny air sacs called the alveoli, where gaseous exchange occur. So that will be the end. So the last and final thing we look at is the what do we call it? The alveoli, and that will be the end of the wonderful respiratory system story. So the bronchial. So let's take a look at this same image again. Let me duplicate the image and bring it here. Okay. So the bronchial. So there's the bronchioles as you see over here. What do we say? It also allows the air passage, right? It also contains cilia and then mucus, right? It also ends into a branch of tiny sacs. So this bunch of tiny sacs you see over here, and these things that you see over here, they are what we call the alveoli. This bunch of tiny sacs you see over here, and that is what is filled with air anytime you breathe. So when the air finally comes through all these things, so let's see if we can start. So from nostrils, the air will go to where? The pharynx, right? The air will go from the pharynx to the what? To the larynx, right? Then from the larynx to what? To the trachea. So the air is still moving. So from the trachea, it moves to where? The bronchus. From the bronchus, the air moves to where? The bronchus. From the bronchus, the air finally goes to where? The alveoli. And that is the last stop. That is the last stop of the air. That is the last stop of the air. Right? The alveoli over here. And that is where the gaseous exchange actually occurs. So when we take in the air, so let's say oxygen. Oxygen will go into the nostrils, and it will move to the pharynx, move to the larynx, move to the trachea, move to the bronchus, move to the bronchial, and finally the air will breathe come and fill these sacs over here. These are like sacs, they are like small balloons. So the air will come and fill it, right? And all this process happens very fast. As we are speaking, it's happening in us. We are breathing and breathing out, and it's very fast. So when we breathe in fast, before we breathe out, the air has passed through all this process that we've talked about, that we've used almost like 2 hours to talk about it. See how God is wonderful. It takes like few seconds for it to work. So when we breathe in, the next second it will go through all this process. Then when we breathe out, it will also come through all this process from our nostrils back. So that is actually what it really happens. So it means when we are breathing out, the process reverse, right? So this time around, it will rather be carbon dioxide. So it will move from the alveoli to the bronchioles in that reverse manner. So when we are breathing out, the arrow sign changes to this way, right? But when you are breathing in, it goes this way as well. So when we are breathing out, the air moves when we are breathing in, the oxygen moves from the nostrils, to the pharynx, to the larynx, to the trachea, to the bronchus, to the bronchial, to the alveoli. When we are breathing out, carbon dioxide moves from the alveoli to the bronchus, to the trachea, to the larynx, to the pharynx, to the nostrils. Then we breathe it out. So anytime you breathe, this is what happens when you are breathing. You see how complicated it looks like? Yeah. So our last thing we'll look at There's the alveoli, the air sacs, those things that
Sir,
stores the air. Hello.
sir, please, is it possible that without broncho, the bronchus and then the bronchial, you won't be able to breathe?
Oh yes, because what happens? Because it is out of the bronchus that we get the bronchus, and out of the bronchioles that we get the alveoli. You get it? And all of these structures are found in the lungs. Now take notice. From the alveoli to the bronchus, the alveoli and the bronchus, they are found within the lung. The bronchus branches into the lungs. So if you take a look at the lung contains the alveoli and the bronchus. Are you getting the point? The lungs contain the alveoli and the bronchus. So if you don't have this, you'll not be able to breathe. The air will enter from this when it reaches here, it doesn't have anywhere to go to get to this place. And even without these two, there is nothing like alveoli. Because it is out of the alveoli out of the bronchioles that we have the alveoli, and out of the bronchus that we have the bronchiole. You see how this thing looks like? You see how it looks like? So
Yes, sir. Thank
without
you.
this and without this, there will not be this, and therefore breathing will not be able to occur. So it means all these structures they connect each other, right? But maybe let's say in future you become a doctor and something happens to your pharynx. Because of that, they have to cut your pharynx away. As for that one, breathing can be possible because remember that from the nostrils when we cut the pharynx, there is a linkage from the nostrils to the larynx. It means air still can pass through to the larynx without by escaping the pharynx. And if you have an issue with your trachea and they have to cut off your trachea, well, doctors can find a way to replace the trachea with something. It could be a pipe or something to link the larynx to the bronchus. Are you getting the whole scenario? Hello? Are you getting the whole scenario?
Yes.
Ah,
Yes.
I realize that you are in JHS, but it's like you already feel like you're a doctor. Alright, so let's take a look at the last one. That is the alveoli. Our last point. So, alveoli. The plural form is alveoli. The singular form is what? Alveolus.
Alveolus.
Yeah. So we can also say air from the bronchial enters the what? Alveoli. Right. Air from the bronchial. Air from the bronchial enters enters. Come on, come on. So we can also say it contains cilia, right? And mucus that traps. So realize at that point, I always say that point it runs through all the structures. Hmm? So contains what? Now when we say cilia, we are talking about the tiny hair, right? Those tiny hairs. And mucus that traps, you can continue. Traps dust, right? Particles. We are talking about, okay, so alveoli. Uh, wait, wait a second. Please don't write the second point. I'm kind of. Oh, the alveoli, they are the air sac. So that is where the final stage occurs. So so it has a moist surface. They are richly surprised, supplied, sorry, supplied with blood vessels. With blood vessels. They have large surface area to ensure what gaseous exchange. And the last one, they contain they contain white blood cells that ingest bacteria. When we say ingest bacteria, like eat the bacteria up, and other foreign substances. So that is the alveoli for you. Can you hear me? Hello.
Hi.
Okay. So let's take a look at the alveoli, and then we can call it a day. So the alveoli is what we call the air sacs, and it's the last stage. That is where the gaseous exchange occurs. So after the air has gone through all the processes, what happens is that it gets stored in the alveoli, and that is where the true gaseous exchange occurs.
So, so,
Hello.
so please you wrote for the last point of the alveoli
Mm-hmm.
contained white blood cells. That's
Ingest. Ingest.
oh, thank you.
Yeah. Ingest is like ingestion, like eating up something.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So I always tell you that the alveoli they look like balloons. Balloons. Small, 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 small balloon structures. balloon-like structures. So they fill up the air. And we say that they are what? They contain a lot of blood vessels. So this is it. This is how the alveoli looks like. So now let's take the points one by one and see how we can talk about it. So air from the bronchus enters the alveoli. That is true. It has a moist surface. Now it has a moist surface means it has a very soft, moist surface, right? So they are also richly supplied with blood vessels. So you can see blood vessels are all around this. When we talk about blood vessels, the veins, the capillaries, and the arteries, right? All those things, those tubes that blood passes through them, those are blood vessels. And the reason being that, you see, the reason why they are mostly surrounded by blood vessels is that it is between, the gaseous exchange happens between the alveoli and the blood vessels. You get it? So the blood contains carbon dioxide, right? It gives the carbon dioxide to the alveoli, and the oxygen that are found within the alveoli is given into the blood, right? So that is how the gaseous exchange occurs. The alveoli contains oxygen. It gives the oxygen to the blood. The blood will have carbon dioxide in it. It will give that same carbon dioxide to the alveoli, right? So we will breathe it out back. The carbon dioxide is what we are going to breathe out. So anytime we are breathing out, is this that we are breathing out. You get the point? And anytime we are breathing in, is this that we are breathing in. Carbon dioxide. Right? Oxygen, right? Good. So they have large surface area. So you can see that they have large surface area to ensure gaseous safety, right? And since they are surrounded by blood, always, they contain white blood cells that ingest bacteria and other foreign substances. So that is the alveoli for you. So it's a very nice story. The respiratory system. I always say when you are learning, see it as a story. So what is the story? The title of the story is, let's see, oxygen. Oxygen going through the respiratory system. That is the title of the story. And how does it begin? It begins when it enters the nose, right? After entering the nose, where does it go to? It comes to the pharynx. We've talked a lot about the pharynx, right? After entering the pharynx, it comes to the voice box. After entering the voice box, it comes to the trachea. The air keeps going, it goes to the bronchus, goes to the bronchial, and then finally comes and gets stored in the what? The alveoli, those tiny sacs. Once it gets into the alveoli, what happens? There is gaseous exchange. The air is given to the blood, and it takes carbon dioxide from the blood, right? And that carbon dioxide is breathed out again. You get it? So basically, that is the process that involves. So I know that when they ask you questions on this, you should be able to answer them, understand them, and answer them. So okay, let me ask this question: which part contains the tonsil? Which part contains the tonsils? Which part contains the tonsils? Hey, nobody can answer. I said it though. Which part contains the tonsils? Which part of the respiratory system contains the tonsil? You can look into your notes and tell me. That one to go. Aaron.
The pharynx.
Okay. Another name for voice box is what? Another name for voice box is what?
Adam's apple.
Larynx.
Uh, did I? Hey, Rade. Suleiman.
Larynx.
Larynx.
Larynx. And someone is saying
Larynx.
Adam's
Larynx.
apple.
Adam's larynx.
Who said the Adam's apple?
Larynx.
I think Suleiman.
You guys. So that is the larynx. That is true. Okay. Now, who can last one? Then we call it today. Who can explain to me how the epiglottis prevents us from getting choked? Who can explain to me? I explain this. Just explain it in your own words. How does the epiglottis prevent us from getting choked? Conrad, let's hear from you.
Please,
Mm-hmm.
when you are eating,
Mm-hmm.
it blocks the windpipe
Mm-hmm.
so that air cannot pass through that side.
Mm-hmm. So that food,
So,
so that
pardon?
so that food cannot pass through that side, not so that air cannot pass through that side.
Yeah, so that food cannot pass through that side so that
Exactly.
we can choke.
Exactly. Exactly. That is it. That is it. Wonderful. So it covers the windpipe so that food does not pass through the windpipe, but rather pass through our esophagus because that is where the food has to go through, not our breathing pathway. Okay, Prince, I can see your hand is up.
There's a flap at the entrance of the trachea
Yeah,
that closes when swallowing occurs.
exactly. So that is true for the epiglottis. Okay. What again? What again? Today we learned a lot of things. I hope you enjoyed the lecture, the lesson.
Yes.
Okay, so please,
Yes, please.
one thing about science is that science is full of revision. Once I've explained it to you, when you go home, before you sleep, you read through over and over and over again. Make sure you understand. Try to explain to people. Your dad, you can
Man,
explain to your
Papa.
dad, you can explain it to your mom. Mom, I want to explain something today. I learned something in class. I want to explain to you. Then you can start by explaining. You can have your notebook beside you. In case you're explaining and realize that where you are going is like you are deviating, you can look through your notes and restart to your parents. It's just to let you understand. Okay. Any question up to this point?
No, please.
No question, right?
Question.
Okay. If there are no questions, then God willing, next week we shall continue. We are not done. We shall continue. There's so much to learn on the respiratory system. This is just the beginning. All right. Have a wonderful day and bye bye.
Please, bye.
Please, is this the end of
Bye
the
bye,
class?
guys. I'll see you next week.
Hey,
Yes,
hey,
this is the end of
please,
the
can
class.
you not copy the alveoli?
Ah,
Who didn't copy the alveoli? Someone said he didn't copy the
Sir, please,
alveoli.
me.
I'm, I'm,
me.
I'm,
Me, sir, please.
so can you now see now? Can you see now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you have all the
Bye
time.
bye.
You have all the time in the world to copy.